Gamers love their graphics, there is no denying it, but which games on the PS5 have the sparkliest, shiniest graphics of all? Well, let's find out. Hello everyone and welcome back to Push Square. My name is Aiden and today I'm breaking down 10 of the best looking games on PS5. There are only a couple of rules: they have to run natively on PS5 and they have to have plenty of pretty pixels. So from spooky horrors to gorgeous alien worlds, here are 10 games with the best graphics on PS5. Honestly, not one I think you'd expect us to start on, but what we have here is Tekken 8. This excellent fighter captured the essence of this decade-spanning franchise with vibrant colours and varied backdrops, which are effortlessly PS1 and 2 era coded in their style, but Bandai Namco somehow manages to marry that up with a real graphical sharpness. Basically, everything in the game looks great, but it still looks like Tekken. Of course, you have all the flashy combos to admire, especially with the new heat system, but for me, a lot of that graphical focus goes into the backgrounds. There's an enormous depth of details to the backgrounds, which can help make the battles feel all the more epic. Whether those are billboard speckled cityscapes or asteroids flying through space, Tekken knows how to mix high quality graphics with obscene settings and designs. Dragon's Dogma 2 is next up, and while I personally don't think the game is the sharpest one out there, especially since it has this whole grainy aesthetic to it, there is something real about it all. Part of me thinks it's the scale, a lot of it has to do with the animations which really sell the enemies, but I think it's primarily down to an aesthetic consistency which helps immerse you in the world all the more. It's not afraid to play with lighting where things can get oppressively dark, and there's a real threat to its enemies, whether that's in their design or their attacks or the emergent style of the gameplay. There is just something decidedly next gen or current gen about Dragon's Dogma 2 that is almost hard to quantify, but it is there. Ghost of Tsushima is technically the only PS4 upgrade on this list, but it rightly deserves its place amidst the best graphical showcases on the PS5. Of course, the original 2020 release looks phenomenal on PS4 and PS4 Pro still, but the PS5 Director's Cut just takes it to the next level. There's a real clean look to Tsushima, which is accentuated in a way by its colour palette and slightly animated art style. This is a realistic looking game in a lot of ways, but it just adds a dash of cinematic flair and a drop of vibrant and exaggerated colours. It certainly helps that things are running smooth as butter, so when you're in the midst of a duel and leaves are falling all around you and the wind is wisping across the landscape, it can really sweep you up in it all. Avatar: Frontiers of Pandora kinda came out of nowhere with its utterly stunning graphics on PS5. Ubisoft has been known to make nice looking games, but I don't think there are often showstoppers in the way that Avatar is. A lot of that may come down to the general design of the world of Pandora, which in itself is a nice looking place. But I don't want to underplay what Massive Entertainment has done here in bringing James Cameron's world to life. The first area of the game, which is the most visually similar to the movies, is so impressive with its foliage moving around and its vibrant pops and its greenery, which just blend beautifully with the first person perspective and the audio experience as well, which I have to shout out here. The hub is pretty minimal as is, but this is one of those games where you just want to turn it off all the way in the settings. I know people clamoured for third person with this game, including myself to be honest, but there's no denying that the first person really thrusts you into its setting. I mean, you can practically breathe in that fresh air. I think cityscapes are an easy thing to be pretty uninspired and dull graphically, especially when you've seen that cityscape in 2 previous games, but Spider-Man 2 somehow manages to up the ante and make New York shine. Of course, we have a more expansive and speedier take on the city as you rip through its streets, but to me, a lot of the improvements come in the form of lighting. HDR is a thing of beauty for certain games, which I will mention more of as we move on, but making shadows deeper and certain colours more vibrant, the lighting in Spider-Man 2 just gives New York a realness to it. Of course, with this being an Insomniac game, you have that impressive attention to detail and character models, the destructive action, and even things like the offices and windows, which are such a pointless little detail, but at the same time, they go such a long way to solidifying this setting. Now, it's been said before, and I will say it again, Ratchet and Clank is what happens when you let Insomniac games meld their graphical prowess with a Pixar-esque art style, and the way that they coalesce make Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart one of those tech showcase games that you'd show to a mate to convince them to buy a PS5, or even something you'd see in a Curry's playing on the TV to show you their clarity and dynamic range. For our American watchers out there, Curry's is like a TV tech shop, but you get the point. The vibrance and pinpoint graphical precision in this game is truly a magic in itself. It is so impressive when you get to see shots like this with all of Ratchet's hair up close, but what's even more impressive is how it retains that level of detail while you jump, spin, shoot and explode your way through its campaign. It's one of those games that continues to leave you mouth agape with every new setting. From start to finish, it is just a feast for the eyes. Remedy games are masters of visual flair. They really started to experiment with it all in Control, but it's mastered here in Alan Wake 2. Now, from a standpoint of graphical shine, a lot of that work is in the lighting, which is massively boosted thanks to HDR. Using exaggerated neon lights in the dark place, and then muted horror-like darkness in Saga's missions, it gives a real visual variety to the whole experience, but also an unmistakable look. Mixing in live-action elements as well gives a real spice over pretty much every other game out there. Stylistically, this is probably my favourite of the bunch. Playing this game on an OLED display is just incredible, and it's boosted all the more for Remedy's flair and casual flexing with environments shifting around you or changing in an instant. There's so much visual sauce on display with Alan Wake 2, and it's all topped off with what is, in my opinion, an underappreciated technical marvel. Not to mention that this is one of the best things to come out of the 2020s so far, so just please play it. Horizon Forbidden West is an already excellent looking game, but of course, it's a cross-gen game, so you could say that there are some perceivable setbacks since it needed to work on both generations. That sort of changed though with the Burning Shores DLC, which ditched its last-gen efforts to stick solely to PS5. There was no official word on whether this was a much better looking version of the game, but my god, Forbidden West very clearly stepped things up with Burning Shores. The new Hollywood setting is stunning from the get, but the water, the lava, the ruined skyscrapers, the rusted Hollywood sign, there's a visual distinctness to it all, and it's probably the best the Horizon series has been visually realised. It felt like the style, ambition and the scale from Guerrilla Games was finally truly possible with Burning Shores, and it is just spectacular. A full PS5 remake of the PS3 classic that also had a PS4 remaster. It might not have seemed like the most needed thing in the world, but there is no denying that The Last of Us Part 1 is truly stunning. Essentially bringing the game beyond the visual level of its 2020 sequel, The Last of Us Part 1 realises all of those emotional and performative beats with stunning graphical finesse. You can see every crease in the face, every teared up eye or drop of brutal blood, and the muted post-apocalyptic environments of this series are a delight to simply take in. Gameplay wise, it doesn't really change too much, but animations are a lot smoother and you have the added benefit of adaptive triggers and haptic feedback. Those of course don't serve the graphics, but they do serve the immersion of the experience so much more, as do the 3D audio improvements. I think there are some instances of the remake losing some character, especially with the colour of the sunset in Bellstown. I don't know, maybe that's just me, but it is undeniable that if you want the best looking version of this experience, then the remake is the way to go, because this world has never looked better. From one remake of a PS3 game to another, Demon's Souls has yet to be topped on the graphical scale, and this was a launch PS5 game. Like The Last of Us, Demon's Souls hasn't changed on a foundational level, but its graphics, which are second to none, are really about selling its world and enemies. For the lore nuts out there, there's no better game to really seep yourself into its setting, and you can feel the history in its walls thanks to the impeccable details and stunning use of lighting, especially in those darker areas. There's an impression to the visual look of Demon's Souls which just works so well, especially when the action-heavy pops of colour start to come about, like a dragon spewing fire. With its various worlds as well, you can go from rainy, barren castle tops to dark, dank prisons and dusty old mines. Each has a visual cohesion despite being so different, and each is a delight to explore in its own. You really feel like you're in some dark and dangerous fantasy world, and so much of that is down to these newly revamped visuals. So those are 10 of the best graphical showcases on the PS5. Please do let me know your personal favourites down in the comments below, and if you'd like to see more, then why not leave a like on the video. I have to say I was a little bit gutted that Dead Space didn't quite make the list, so I would love to talk about that in a future video perhaps if you would like to see another one of these. But anyway, thank you so much for watching, and until next time, I've been Aaron, and this has been Push Square.